A very good evening to all of you. On behalf of TCS ION, I welcome you all to this very interesting webinar on the National Education Policy. First, a short introduction of myself. My name is Poshali Chatterjee. I am heading the TCS ION Talent Development Center offering, wherein we take end-to-end talent development center offerings to corporates, governments. I'm also a Manipuri dancer by passion and a dance movement therapist, and which makes it even more exciting for me to be part of this webinar because, as we all know, the National Education Policy is now introducing creative arts as part of the curriculum. So just a little bit of introduction on the NEP. The NEP, or the National Education Policy 2020, was approved by the Union Cabinet of India on 29 July 2020. It outlines the vision of India's new education system moving forward. The NEP is a national education framework to guide the development of education in our country. This education policy lays emphasis on the development of the creative potential of every individual. It is based on the principle that education must develop not only cognitive capacities, both the foundational capacities of literacy and numeracy and higher order cognitive capacities such as critical thinking and problem solving, but also social, ethical, and very importantly, emotional capacities and dispositions. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Jawahar Surisetti, foundational capacities of the slide up. Dr. Jawahar Surisetti is an eminent educationist, psychologist, and author of the international bestseller Mama and Me. Has launched a movement, Think India, Socho to Planet, discusses the current education system that provides children with information, but not with the power of thought. He aims to raise awareness and convince at least 1 crore Indians to join his movement to introduce thinking in education in the coming year. He has been awarded the Man of the Year by the US Chamber of Commerce. He invented the Think curriculum, which is based on the linear learning process, where all 5 forms are used for holistic learning and children are forced to think. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, Dr. Jawahar. So, sir, we'll start with the first question for today. The Education Policy 2020 comes with many changes in education in the country. So, what are its key features? And please let our audience also know how it will facilitate the universalization of education in India. Dr. Jawahar.
Okay, so some salient features are that unlike the previous policies that have been formulated by the government, this does not put the government at the center or the teacher at the center. This policy puts the children at the center. This is a very important policy change. The second thing is that it aims to internationalize Indian education. So we want to make it similar to the other countries of the world. The third is it's a freedom for merit kind of a policy wherein not many shackles are there for people who want to deliver quality. And so there were a lot of things in place, checks and balances, which are now removed for the sake of quality. As far as the universalization is concerned, the first thing is that we've tried to make a system wherein the quality of education delivered is equal to both public and private schools, one. The second is we want to bring in the 2 crore out-of-school children who are known as Shala Tyagi back into the system so that they can continue their education. The third is that we have tried to create an ecosystem where philanthropy also can come into and invest into the school education system so that the reach can be more than the usual thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are some very, very interesting and encouraging points of the national education policy. And I think there is a thought that, people go outside of India for good quality education. So this will actually help in keeping stopping the brain drain, so to say.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'll move on to my next question, which is that the NEP 2020 aims to free our schools and colleges from periodic inspections and place them on the path of self-assessment and voluntary declaration. So, I request you to guide us on how transparency, maintaining quality standards, and a favorable public perception can be achieved by self-assessment and voluntary declaration. If you can just throw some light on that.
So, although the policy states this, this was started way back in 2014 when the agencies or mandatory bodies which were supposed to inspect had already started the self-disclosure scheme, but they did not completely withdraw themselves with the view that they would become powerless in case they don't inspect. This policy withdraws the rest of the inspections also and puts it completely on self-assessment, self-disclosure mode. Internationally, this is the way it is done. The trust between educational institutions and the mandatory bodies is the most important thing that is required, because if you don't trust your teachers, your education givers, then probably the whole education process which runs on ethics is a failure in case you don't trust them. So the basic premise is that we believe in you. You self-assess, self-disclose yourself based on the parameters given by the government. There might be random checks to see whether your self-disclosure has been right or not, which is valid, because there are a lot of people who do that. But otherwise, there is no mandate. There is only a mandatory disclosure and no inspection Raj, which we want to see in place by 2022.
Okay, that's a wonderful thing, sir. And, trust is very important, and taking things in utmost good faith so that there's a mutual trust and respect. That's wonderful, sir. Moving on to my next question, Dr. Johar, the education system currently follows the 10+2 structure. This will soon be replaced by the new pedagogical and curricular structure of school education, which is 5+3+3+4. Could you please elaborate further on this structure? How will this work?
Yes, a lot of parents posted questions on my website on this, so it's important to clarify. So earlier, the schooling that used to happen, formal schooling, was 10+2. Now, after the research by the committee, it has come to know that 80-85% of all neural networks and the relationships that we draw with all the learning that happens before the age of 8. And what we were doing till now is we were starting at age 6. And Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan was six years onwards. We were ignoring the pre-6 ages. Now what they have done is that since 85% of learning happens during these years, they have done 5 years, which is 3 to 8. Then which means that earlier Anganwadis in the government system or preschools in the private system, which were not under the purview of the school education system, are now in the purview of it. So they have integrated the preschool 3 years and class 1 and class 2 as 5. Then 3rd, 4th, 5th as 3, 6th, 7th, 8th as 3, and 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th as 4. So that is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So what they have done is they have integrated the preschool and made it 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. There is no other change. So the hand-holding of the child formally, which was earlier done by Women and Childcare Department, the Anganwadis, till age 6, is now being done by the Ministry of Education only.
Okay. Seems to be based on neuroscience, that which says that the subconscious mind and everything gets formed by a certain age. So the schooling should also start by that age. That's very interesting. I'll move to the next question. Children will now be able to learn to code from class 6, as coding will be included as part of the curriculum. This move will put students at par with the Chinese, where similar policies with regards to coding have already been implemented in the education system. What challenges, doctor, do you think that the government schools will face regarding coding? If you can please share your insights on this.
So the pandemic has shown us some things that the digital divide is very high.
Yes.
And that is the same challenge that these schools will face post coding. So this matter has been addressed in the national education policy, and the Digital India scheme wants to put in. They have already put in 1.5 lakh gram panchayats on optical fiber. Another 1.5 lakh gram panchayats should be there in the next 2 years. This is what Digital India aims. Once that is done, I think the major issues will be sorted out. But that's a easier thing said than done. I can understand that, but we are looking at public-private partnerships to get into this space. Coding is not the only skill that we are looking at. We are looking at a lot of skills. Coding is one of them.
Yes.
So, apart from coding, there are a lot of skills which are forward-looking. But also we are looking at local skills. So for rural people, coding might not, I don't discourage them, but I am saying that in the immediate future, coding might not attract them. Add to that the woes that the IT infrastructure of government schools is not very good. So what we have said is that every week, one day, one local skilled person, it might be a farmer, it can be a carpenter, it can be anyone, takes a class of the students so that they get nearer to that skill, which is a very beautiful part, that it is not the teacher teaching those skills, it is that skilled person who is teaching. So once in a week that is going to happen, and similar such skills the local authorities have been asked to identify. And coding can be one of them. They are saying AI is one of the another skill that they want to teach, and similar other skills which they want to put into place from the 6th class onwards.
Okay, so these are those bagless days that is being talked about, right? Bagless days, yeah, and the vocational education, and actually giving more respect to vocational education, which we don't have currently, unfortunately, in our country. Okay, so my last question for today, doctor, is that what do you think the emphasis on mother tongue or regional language means for the English medium schools? How will they address that issue?
So again, I go back to the survey that was done. Before the NEP was formulated, there was a huge survey that was done. Also, this is the biggest reach out exercise that the government has made. So we've had around 2 lakh universities, schools, colleges that had come into place, around 1,04,000 gram panchayats which had been contacted on what are the issues that they are facing at ground level for the education, and they had put in their suggestions which were compiled and given to the committee. So the reach out has been humongous. It has not been as we usually point out, that it's an AC room exercise of policy making. It's not like that. The second thing is that in case we are wanting to see that the NEP reaches out to people, then there are some issues that needed to be sorted out. The first issue that looked to me was the implementation itself. The NEP per se looks to be a very good document, at least in terms of the document. But in terms of the actual implementation, usually the governments have faltered. This is because education is a concurrent list subject. It is equal responsibility of the states as well as the center. So the policy might be the centers, but some state like Chhattisgarh or Uttaranchal or Jharkhand might say that how can you hold us equal to Kerala or Tamil Nadu, which are forward states. So we cannot have a uniform policy for that. Now, when you said that vernacular is something that has to be given importance, how do the English medium say? This is where, when the draft document was publicized, Tamil Nadu's education minister wrote back to the government saying that it is not in good taste that you force us to study Hindi. The first document had Hindi as a compulsory subject. And then they made it a three-pronged attack. That one, you can have the local language. Second, you can have the mother tongue. Third, you can have Hindi. So you can choose either of these. And then two of these. or the fourth is now English. So you can choose any two of them. So I don't think the English schools have anything to crib about, because they are already teaching Hindi or local language as the second language. So it remains the same.
I think the question revolves around when they start learning English. So the English medium schools will continue perhaps to teach them English from a much younger age. That will continue.
No change in it.
Okay, wonderful. And I think the fact that you said that this is not an AC room policy making, but actually going down to the ground level and a bottoms up kind of approach, that is very good. In fact, all of us here actually wish that this education policy was there when we were studying. But hopefully our future generations will benefit from it. So, Doctor, my questions are over. I think I will just hand it over to Naresh to see if there are any questions that have come, and we'll take some questions from our listeners. Yes, audience, please feel free to post your questions. Please state your name and which institution or organization you're from, so that it helps us to contextualize the questions.
So I have a question for myself.
Okay.
Meanwhile you can gather. So what is the difference in the school education or college education that the new education policy proposes is very interesting. So if there is some question, we'll answer that and take this later. Again, based on brain research, what they've done is that fun and discovery based learning is the first 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, they have divided into 4 parts. So the first 5, they want that you should have fun learning, so the bagless days and all those come into play. Yes. The second is the 3rd, 4th, 5th class, they want discovery based learning, so the student slowly tries to discover, form relationships, associations, etc. Then the third, that is 6th, 7th, 8th, they want experiential learning to happen. And 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, that's formal, subject based, but it should be a la carte. I say this a la carte because earlier the combinations were, if you want to go for engineering, maths, physics, chemistry, or if you want to go for medicine, you go for biology. So now they have opened it up. They have made it that I choose paneer butter masala, jeera rice, whatever you want to choose from the menu, you can choose. So that's one beautiful thing, that they have made it a la carte.
Yes, in fact, that was one of the things that I may be studying science, but I may also have an interest in history, which is how the international universities operate. So yeah, I think that's a great point. I have a question from my side, Doctor. Like I said, that I'm a dancer and a dance movement therapist. So I also know that we are now encouraging creative arts into the curriculum as not just as a co-curricular activity, but as something that children can actually opt for. So what was the thinking behind that, sir? If you can throw some light.
Yeah. So this thought that came into why creative arts is something which is very related, because we are now looking not at watertight compartments in terms of education. So if I may jocularly say that for a small child, if a teacher comes in and says, now maths class, open your maths book and maths switch on, and 40 minutes later, math switch off, English switch on, English switch off. It is not fair on the child. So I can calculate what is the final velocity, what is the initial velocity, what is the time. Time is already there in the timer, the acceleration, etc. So it's a very interesting way to teach physics. So this is transitional. Similarly, when it comes to your dance, I can teach dance and mathematics together. So geographical progression, geometrical progression, if I want to teach, then a dance steps of a left steps of a dancer, right steps of a dancer, the students can count and come up with some progressions, or they can also come up with some statistics on how many left steps and how many right steps, etc. And there will be a method or design to what the dancer does, which we might not realize. So something like this is what we had envisaged when we thought that we should bring in creative arts also.
Absolutely. With the Tala system, the rhythms that we have to do a lot of calculations. So I was very poor at maths, so I used to have some challenges, but we do have to do some, calculations when we are, calculating the Tala and the half beats and the double beats, etc. So I now have some questions for you. So Prasanna Vijay from National Public School, Bangalore is asking, I would like to know if English medium schools can continue with that. I think Sir has already touched upon this, but Sir, if you can add a little bit more on this question.
The first thing is that this national education policy is has to go through the test of parliament. Please understand, this is not an act as of now.
Right.
So the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha have to go through it. It has to go through it. There will be a lot of discussion and deliberation wherein such points like the person from National Public School has raised are already there. The questions are already there. So what we are wanting to do is not to disturb the existing ecosystem. We don't want to disturb the existing ecosystem. We want to add value to the current system. So I am very categorically stating this because there are a lot of questions whether the Tamil will become compulsory or Kannada will become compulsory or something like that. But the second language system which already exists it is the same part of the system, except that I can choose between Tamil and Hindi. So I don't think it does not disturb the current system. You can be rest assured it doesn't change anything.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next question is from Dr. M. Sudha Devi. So she says that NEP has changed the format, but what about the quality of input? So that's an interesting question. Yeah. Sir, if you can tell us.
So the quality of input is something that we need to reflect on as teachers. If you are a teacher who's asking this question, it is something for us to understand this. Over the years, I know that you would have heard this many a times, but over the years, the passion of the teacher has reduced. It has become more mechanical because the working hours are very convenient for the people working there. There is a rampant concentration on tuitions outside of the school network, and there are commercial interests involved. So the teacher has not upgraded herself or himself, so much so that the student finds himself stranded in a class forcibly, and he says that all this I can find it on Google or OCW of many schools or universities. Why should I come to the class? But since attendance is compulsory, I am sitting here, so his concentration is somewhere while his presence is in the classroom. So it is on the teachers to understand that a very simple formula that I have made out is that learning is equal to teaching plus emotion. So even when you go for your alumni meets, you have tens of teachers have taught you in the school, but you have one favorite teacher. And that one favorite teacher is your favorite, not because her sari is good or something like that, but what she has taught has touched you somewhere, and that means there is an emotional content to it. So teaching plus emotion has to be there. That emotion part has gone missing these days. And that is the reason why I am saying it is first on our part as teachers to reflect. Now coming to the NEP and the government's part to be played in this. So what the government is doing is they have set up a commission for separately for this, and this will be the same for government schools as well as private schools. They are doing research on pedagogy, how to teach, teacher upgradation, etc. There are already 28 modules up on the CBSE website, free for all teachers. I think it is 100 rupees. I think if it's not free, earlier it was free. For pandemic, it was free. But you can upgrade yourself easily during the lockdown. Instead of trying to cook something different, if you can try to upgrade yourself doing these courses, I think it's a very good reflection of the teaching community, because they are the actual corona warriors. When the things went online, the teachers were not very comfortable with that online kind of a thing, but then they took up the challenge and then went. So I am fully appreciative of that. But I think you should not wait for a pandemic to come to upgrade yourself, and the government is there completely. The NEP completely gives one chapter to the upgradation of teacher, the assessment of teachers, and the content to be provided free of cost to the teachers for upgradation. The best of content will be available. International content will be available on this platform.
Right. I think it's very important because I do think that, the kind of respect we used to have for our teachers when we studied in school, I don't see that in today's kids, and we can't blame them. Maybe that you have to earn respect also. So I think that constant upgradation is important. I think, okay, there are lots of questions coming in. I think we'll be able to take 2-3 more questions. This is Geeta Gangwani, BBPS RH. Okay. She says that the formal schooling at foundational stage is of 3 years before class 1 as compared to 2 years before class 1 currently. So who will take care of this extra 1 year, especially when a school which does not have infrastructure for extra class?
Okay. So to answer this question, already I've answered it, but I'll still go ahead and do it. So the Anganwadis or Bal Vatikas, which they are going to be named as, are going to be made for 3 years. So the Women and Childcare Development Ministry, which takes care of these Anganwadis or Bal Vatikas, takes care of the first 3 years of education. But till now, what used to happen was the preschooling, whether it is private or public, which is Anganwadis, were not regulated. So the curriculum that they were teaching was generic in nature, but there was no regulation as in the case of class 1 onwards. So what we have done now is, we have tried and put the curriculum of these classes also in place and given it to Anganwadis also. So Anganwadis or Bal Vatikas will be 3 years, and then class 1 and 2 will be 2 years. So that is the first 5 years. They will have a fixed curriculum universalized to the whole country. And there will be some quality regulations for the first 3 years of Anganwadis or preschools, so that there is a uniformity across the country in what they are teaching. To answer your question, we have increased 1 year in the Anganwadi. The second and a phased out approach is that we are wanting to bring all these 3 years, with pre-6 years, into the Ministry of Education, so that the coordination is better. Only one ministry takes care of the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4.
Thank you, sir. There was a question which, Miss Anjali from New Horizon Gurukul, Bangalore, she asks that when is NEP implemented? It has not been implemented. So the question I can just rephrase as, when will it be implemented?
So the dates that the government has given is 2022. Okay. 2022 is when we start. There will be initially a few things like 30% cut off the curriculum due to COVID is what has been mentioned in the NEP also. So there will be a syllabus cut of 30% across, which since it has happened in the pandemic, it will continue. So this will happen prior to 2022. Even next year, there will be a 30% cut. There are some things which the state governments have been told to implement from the NEP prior to 2022 in case it is possible for them, like the bagless days and all those. So which is possible because there is no infrastructure requirement in those. But primarily to say that 2022 is the year when the NEP comes into full force. There are some components of NEP which they have given dates like the 100% schooling for children, which is all children are in school. This is by 2030. This is what we are looking at. And 2025, we are looking at our gross enrollment ratio, which is 26.3 as of now, going up to 50%. So that is for higher education. So these are some things which are for later dates. B.Ed also, the 4-year B.Ed course is going to be in 2030. Otherwise, the NEP starts from 2022.
All right. Then the next question is from Nagalakshmi R from Bangalore. Sir, will there be a chance for the students to flip subjects after a year, like in IGCSE and IB curriculum? So is this possible with NEP?
See, very good question. We are looking at a similar kind of a system, but there are the question is easy, the answer is difficult because suppose you are running a school and somebody says that in the middle of the year or the next year, I want to take French because that is the in the menu card that is mentioned, and I don't have a French teacher because last year nobody had taken it. So it increases the cost of the school to bring a French teacher just for you. So there is an option where the schools will choose a list of subjects which they are going to offer based on the resources that they have. Between these subjects, you can opt to flip.
Thank you for that. Another question from Ms. Rita, is there some training for content development with NEP?
Yes. So content development primarily from the government side is done by the National Council for Educational Research and Training, NCERT, for at the central level, and SCERTs at the state level. It will continue to do so. The NCERTs and SCERTs are mandated and budgeted in such a way that private school teachers, principals, etc., are also to be participants of the content development team of the SCERT of the state. Because the richness of content that private players might also have in addition to the government's is something that we want to dig deep into. And that's the reason we have a participative thing going on. So in case your closest NCERT is there, please approach them. They look out for content developers. They want to enrich their content, which they do on a periodic basis, 3 years to 10 years. And you can participate in, it can be voluntary. They will be very much happy to do that for you. But the content is something which is the key to a lot of state governments and the central government. They would look forward to any contributions from your side. So I think that's it.
I think it was on whether there will be training provided for content development.
Answer was that NCERT and SCERT do trainings for content development for private as well as public schools. So from there they pick up the people who can participate in the content development actually.
Okay, wonderful. Then Renuka from GNS Bengaluru, she says, sir, can you explain how the students are going to choose the branches they want to specialize in after class 8?
Okay. So I am not going, or the policy is not going into the eligibility criteria of exams. We are only concerned about the student's choice of subjects based on his passion as well as aspiration. We understand that the student, his parents, his teachers are aware of the eligibility criteria, and we'll see that if a student wants to go for a certain thing, then how does he fit in the subjects within that eligibility criteria, taking in view his passions also. So for example, I'll tell you, assuming that maths, physics, chemistry remains the eligibility criteria for engineering, then I can take maths, physics, chemistry, and I can also take some other subject which is economics. I can also take a fifth subject, which can be music, which can be my passion. Now, why I am saying this is, it is also happening now. So there is nothing new in what I am saying. But what I am saying is, suppose a student says that I don't want to do engineering, but I want to do maths, or I want to do maths and physics. I don't want to do chemistry. He is stuck with chemistry. So I want to give that student an option not to take chemistry, but instead of that, take something. Maybe he can take accounts, he can take business management, he can take music, whatever. The second important thing that I want to say here to the lady or gent who has asked this question is, till now there were two sets of subjects. One was known as the co-scholastic, so music, sports, etc. used to come under co-scholastic. Whereas there was a set of subjects which were the main subjects, so social studies, science, etc., etc. Now what they have done is, in the policy they have said everything is equal. So you choose your subjects not on the basis of co-scholastic and scholastic. Co-scholastic becomes the main subject. You can choose sports as the main subject. So it's a beautiful thing to do. So don't force somebody to get into engineering in case he doesn't want to get into. Let him choose his subject. This is the policy.
Right, but parents have also.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is from, so this person says that this is, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but this is Bon Stella from ES Lords International School. I have a question on our education system. What are the changes in the education system in this pandemic situation? I think you've already said that 30% curriculum cut has been given, but are there any other changes in the education system?
Yes. So again, I don't know whether that's a central board school or a state board school, but any which way I'll tell for both. States have formulated separate strategies. So assuming that we will not be able to reopen schools in some states till April, what they have done is they have put in the assignment system, wherein every month there is an assignment, then they are being graded. There is an interview also that is going on in some states to assess whether the assignment really has been done by the student or not. And this monthly assignment cumulatively will form the final result of the student in case the final exam does not happen. This is one. The second is the 10th board exams has been clearly said by the central board and some state boards that 30% of the weightage will be done on the internal assessment, and 70% will be based on the exams that will be held not in March but in April. Practicals can be done online. This is what has been told in case it is not possible to go to school to do it. Or if the schools reopen and then there can be a change, but as of now, this is the thing. 30% cut is what I have told you, that applies to the exams also, which includes the board exams also. The last thing is that most probably, I am not promising it, but most probably the centers, exam centers for board exams, which used to be far and wide, will now become the own school or the nearest school for the children. So they don't have to travel much. It is possible that if the numbers permit, then your own school might become the exam center and you hold your board exams yourself. This is a change that is very possible now.
That actually for the children. Two quick questions I will ask. One is from Siddharthi Mishra. After NEP, will there be common textbooks all over India?
So as of now, no. As of now, no, because the NEP has a very strong focus on local content. So due to that, I am saying, although it's nowhere written in the NEP that there might not be a common this thing, but since they say that local content, the NEP goes on to say that 20% of content should only be the common content. 80% should be the local content. This is what the NEP says. So keeping that in mind, I can clearly infer that the books will not be the same for all.
Right. And another question from Rohit Chandra from Raipur is that how will the sports department work once NEP is implemented?
So the sports has as I said, one thing has gained the status of a full subject, as I had told you earlier. So that is something to clap the NEP for or pat the NEP for. But keeping that aside, sports as a full subject will have to see a sea change in the way it is taught in schools. So that once the NEP is implemented, the sports teachers will have to take care. Till now, what they were doing, they were getting one sports period per day, which they used to go and play in the ground. Now, when you have a full subject in the form of sport, which has to be 50% practical, 50% theory, then the student has to be graded in such a way that his interest of sport, that brings me to the point that we are looking at a separate sports school in each district of the country, wherein 4 hours of regular study of CBSE will be done in the school and 4 hours of sport will be done. This is from grade 6 onwards. This is in the plan stage still. But 6th, 7th, 8th, he will play 2 sports, and 9th onwards, he can shift to one sport which he wants to make his career on. So sports schools is something which the NEP wants to focus on in future.
Okay, great. I think last 1 or 2 questions. Okay, this is asked by The person hasn't given the name, but it says Cambridge International has brought out an early years program curriculum. So are Indian education boards like CBSE, ICSE going to come up with an early years curriculum? We follow the Montessori program for early years. So will there be any impact on Montessori or Waldorf schools? This is Aparna from Global Montessori Center.
So as of now, as I have told earlier, there will not be any change. There will be status quo maintained for anything that is being taught. The early childhood education is a focus area of the national education policy. So there is a lot of research that will go on, a lot of money is being pumped into ECCE, and any inputs from ECCE to you, I think will add value, but they will not take away anything that you are already doing. It can just add value to you. So all resources that are done by research of ECCE will be given to you free of cost. You can use them, you can throw them away. It depends on you. But anything that you are currently doing, which is international, and has a set base, I don't think that is going to be disturbed. One request I have: do you have any questions on university or college education which has not been addressed as of now?
Yes, I know. I did have that question, so I'm just checking the questions here. No, I think most of the questions are on school curriculum. Sir, would you like to just touch upon the fact that now it's a 4-year curriculum rather than 3-year?
So it's a gradual shift from the Indian system to the international system. So any students, there are around 1.4 lakh students going from India to the US, and they are not allowed to do a post-graduation after the 3-year graduation here. So only engineers and doctors can do their post-graduation in the US, but the 3-year degrees like BCom, BSc, they have to do a 1-year separate thing, or a 1 year of post-graduation here before they go there. So what we have done is we have done exit system, in which after you do the first year of graduation, you get a certificate. So dropouts from the system can also get a certificate after the first year, which makes them employable. The second year after they do is diploma. The third year they do a graduation, and the fourth year they get an advanced graduation, which is graduation with research, they say. So one research paper is included in that. So we are slowly shifting to a 4-year diploma, 4-year degree course, so that we are able to send students across the world without any inconvenience caused to the students. That is the first thing. The second thing is, because we have a parallel system running wherein we have a 3-year degree course and a 2-year post-graduation course and then 1-year MPhil and then PhD, how do we mix and match this? So they have made it very clear that those who have already done their first year, 3-year degree course can go for a 2-year post-graduation course. But those who do their 4-year degree course have to do only 1 year of post-graduation, so that puts them at par. So there are lots of permutations, combinations they have done to address this situation. But it looks to me like the liberalization of Indian education and putting Indian education at par with foreign universities is something that makes India proud, in the sense that 50 or 100 of the top universities will be invited to set up campuses in India. And similarly, Indian good quality universities will be sent abroad to set up their campuses. So it's an equal footing for India. This is what we perceive. Instead of just saying that the foreign universities are better, we are trying to bring them in, and our best universities can go out. So something beautiful is happening in the NEP.
Right, and they also get the option of changing their specialization after 1 year if they feel that this is not suited to me, right?
They can change. They can change. So again, the a la carte system extends from 9th onwards to the post-graduation.
Post-graduation. So, sir, I know we are coming close to our ending time. There's one question from my side. There's also this entire group of special children who are there. So in NEP, are we looking at any provision for special children? Because that is one area in our country probably is not very well addressed at this point of time.
No, NEP has addressed special children, and they have also categorized the special children mean not just this. This might mean this. They have made a very clear categorization. For special children, see again, the government might propose some norms. They might say that you should have a ramp. you should have a lift, you can say all that, you can have separate toilets, but that's not all that is to it. Because in a classroom, the acceptance or inclusion of special children is something which is not happening in Indian schools. We look at them at the admission point only with a great amount of suspicion and block them there. And I see a lot of parents coming to me and saying that this is a problem. Unless we include the students, see, the inclusion is not that the rest of the children will be disturbed or something like that. See, the level of disadvantage that the child has can be deciphered, and then they put in with a special education teacher for X number of hours, and just give one class so that he is included in the class, and then slowly as he improves, include him for 2 periods, then 3 periods, and then fully include him by the time he is all right. But that is also not happening. Parents or the schools, if they cooperate and say that for one class, if you can send your special child to my school, I will see what I can do. That's also a big gesture if they don't want to. But they have to gradually include these children. Inclusiveness is something that is a part of the NEP, and it's an integral part of the NEP.
Okay, that's good to hear, sir. I know there are many other questions. Unfortunately, we will not be able to address them today. So please send them across to our channel and we'll get them answered by sir. Dr. Surisetti, it has been an absolute privilege and honor. Very, very nice and interesting insights. And we are really looking forward to the implementation of NEP. And thank you very much for giving your time to us. And I'm sure that all our audience has been really benefited by all the insights that you've shared with us. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Pleasure.